So what can today's big man do to survive? Hard question, I think.
It's a hard question, yeah. Post touches or post scoring is pretty much it's becoming a lost art in the NBA. I mean, there's some fives that, are strictly post players, but, so much of the time now, lineups dictate matchups. So you're seeing kind of the evolution of this pace and space game becoming, if fours and fives don't shoot threes, then you're kind of not being able to be used at your full capacity out there on the floor. So it's definitely something that you're seeing less and less of, and whether it's guys' usage rate or so on and so forth. But you see even some of the bigs in the league, whether it be Embiid, whether it be Karl Anthony Towns, so on and so forth, they're stepping out and shooting threes now. It's just become, with the analytics of the game and where the game is headed, so much of that.
It literally could be extinct from the NBA in 3 years.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Well, for me, it's really tough, and how I feel about that is I grew up watching, 70s, 80s, 90s style basketball. So my favorite players were fours and fives, and that was, all the way from, the old school Boston Celtics, Showtime Lakers, Bad Boy Pistons, and teams of that era where, basically every time down, you're throwing it into the post and playing through your 4 or 5 man. So me, it's tough to see that. Thankfully, I had a father who was 6'9", 6'10", who could really shoot the basketball, and he told me early on he had the foresight to see that this is where the game was headed. So he had me handling the ball, he had me shooting threes, and knowing that I was able to step out and do that. But like anybody playing that position growing up, you are first taught and you first learn that the game is played from the inside out. And for me, it's tough to see that. I think it's a lost art. So hopefully, the numbers won't trend too far in that direction, because, basketball is meant to be played in several different ways. And, you have to take advantage of any opportunity, any lineup, like I mentioned, that's going to dictate the matchup, and you got to take advantage of mismatches.
I think someone told me that you used to watch film of Nowitzki with your dad, right?
For sure. I used to watch Dirk all the time, whether it be with, my father or my best friends. And that was an era where, even KG was stepping out. He was hitting 17, 18, 19 footers. Tim Duncan was putting that ball off the glass, big fundamental. He was hitting threes in the playoffs even, but Dirk was really the one who had that so much influence on the game. I look at two players like almost Steph Curry that has influenced the game in such a huge way. And same thing with Dirk, being 7 foot tall, and being able to really not only just shoot his iconic fadeaway over that right shoulder, but also stepping up in transition, hitting those threes, putting the ball on the deck, getting to the hole, posting up. I think he's really changed the game. We mentioned pace and space, but as far as 4 men and 5 men, being able to step out and shoot the three, not only willingly, but hitting at a high clip has been very influential.
So what about a guy like Roy Hibbert, Defensive Player of the Year, 1 year, out of the league in 3 years? What are you thinking as a player yourself who was in the post?
Yeah, it's crazy to see, especially from, you talk about that era with Shaq being the last, true center that was an MVP. I think of Yao during that time. I think of, a lot of different players that were sole 5 men that just played in the paint. And now you fast forward today, you mentioned Roy Hibbert, who was Defensive Player of the Year, and Indiana was a grinded out type of team. Played through him, Paul George, David West, guys that played a little bit of mid range, but also posted up on a lot of their possessions. To now, a guy like Roy Hibbert's out of the league, and you're seeing players, if they're not able to step out and hit threes, they're not used as much. They're not played as much. They're not getting as many minutes. They're not getting as many looks. They're maybe not in the team's long-term plans. With where the league is headed. So it's it's just an interesting point of where the game's at now, and I don't know what that looks like for the appeal of the game, what it looks like for the fans, what it looks like moving forward. But you just continue to see that, whether you really pay attention to it or not, that's kind of getting put to the wayside, and more and more players are we're playing, I guess you could call it small ball, where players are 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", playing the center primarily, but stepping out and shooting 5, 6, 7 threes a game.
So I wonder what year, I'm assuming it was when you were in Minnesota, because you were a great post-up player in Minnesota, when you realized, okay, adapt or die, I've got to change.
Yeah, well, for me, it was definitely adapt or die when I got here to Cleveland. It was, I knew that I wouldn't be posting up as much anymore. We had two ball-dominant players in Kyrie and LeBron, and I had to kind of see where I fit in. I went from getting so many touches in the post and being the primary number one option to being the third guy and really just being a floor spacer a lot of the time. So I had to know when that ball was coming. I had to fit my role, sacrifice, and that's when I really realized that, okay, I have to be able to be a shot taker, but also a shot maker as well from that three-point line. I had been shooting it a lot, in my career already, really from my second or third year on. But now, I'm getting up at least 5, 6 a game.
When you used to play in the post, the physicality of that, but you never get calls, right, if you're in the post?
Yeah, I think that's where the game has gone as well as, typically where, you get some foul calls in the post. I think you are protected far more on the perimeter and outside of the three-point line. So I think it was 2016 or 2017 when Kawhi went down with the ankle injury, and it was in the, I think, Western Conference Finals, I believe. And he sprained his ankle. Zaza had gone out there, and now I think a lot of league rules have changed where they're protecting their players. You can't get into their space. You have to protect their landing. It's depending on if you even touch the guy out there on the floor, it's a foul, and sometimes rightfully so. But we're protecting players, I believe, so much more on the perimeter and out there. And I think that is a big reason that whether it's analytics, whether it's the coaching staff, players. That's why in some ways it's trending that direction, just because you can get more out of that, and it's a free shot, or you're getting free shots at the free throw line.
Do you think that's fair?
I don't know. It's a tough one to answer for me because obviously I do both, and I've had my fair share of injuries in this league, but a lot of them have been contact as well. But knock on wood, none of them have actually been from the perimeter. A lot of them have been in the post, which is it's definitely a tough one to answer to me or for me, and I don't know if I can fully give the right answer for that.
Fair enough. So contrary to the league-wide trends, your post play is actually surging this year with a new coaching staff. So is that a conscious choice by you and the coaches, do you think? I mean, they're using you differently.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm still getting my looks from the perimeter, but I think a lot of my touches have come from the post this year just by effort to get there, get in the paint, get my touches there, rim run. If we're in the bonus, try and go down there and get a shot off. If not, get it fouled or get fouled. But just playing my game. That was something that I went away from for several years in the league, and I was so effective early in my career in the post. So this is just something that I just made a conscious decision before the season that I was going to post up a little more, whether it be to score the ball or facilitate the offense and pass the ball.
So when you first transformed your body, and that was, I think, in part, right, because you were moving away from the post.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
How hard is it to make this transformation that you have made? Very few have made it.
No, it's been a very tough transformation. I know early on it was more longevity purposes and changing my body. It was, I can't be 275 pounds and, think I'm going to play 15, 17, 20 years in the league. I knew that, playing back-to-back games against Tim Duncan in San Antonio, and then flying home and playing KG and the Celtics was something I really had to be in shape for and wrap my mind around. So making the transition was a big part, so I could play against those guys in heavy minutes, but also where the game was headed, knowing that I was going to have to step out and play a more perimeter-oriented game. So I had always shot it out there, but I had never really played or defended on that far out from the basket. And while it's tough to make the transition on the offensive end, even it's really hard to guard it as well. And I think that's even another reason that you see this is where the game's headed. Just because as a 4 or 5 man, you don't, or in our time, we didn't really grow up guarding that at that capacity or at that level. Or many times a guy could shoot it, but he couldn't really put it on the deck. He couldn't come off screens, pin downs, and now you're seeing that all the time.
So what can today's big man do to survive? Hard question, I think.
It's a hard question. Yeah, I mean, it's what can today's big man do to survive? Like I mentioned, you're seeing it with guys being able to step out and shoot. I think you have to be able to guard or switch multiple positions. I think, it's funny you talk about, it's he can't defend this or he can't defend that. It's like when you go against, 2 or 3 of the best shooters of all time on a Golden State team, that's when you really figure out, like, wow, this is where the game is headed. And you're having to switch off onto a Klay Thompson. You have to switch off onto a Steph Curry at the time, Kevin Durant. And, being a 4 or 5 man, you really have to do that. You're dead in the water. So, I think big men can continue to push their game out. I think if you're dominant enough, like an Embiid, if you play inside, you can win games. You can win playoff games. You can potentially take your team to the top. But I think I think you have to, in some ways, I don't know if it's being a more complete player, but you do have to be able to play that inside-out game and find, like anything in life, balance.
So if Shaquille O'Neal were in his prime today, would his coach post him up?
You have to post Shaq up, right? Shaq, yeah, he's so, it's funny because you look at, is it Orlando Shaq or Lakers Shaq? Because I know today it would have to look a lot more like Orlando Shaq. You'd have to be able to really run the floor, really move. Whereas, 2001 MVP Shaq, he would still be that dominant player we see today, but he might be able, I'm not saying he's going to go out and shoot threes or shoot mid-range, that kind of thing, but he might have to, guard away from the basket a little bit. The evolution of this pace and space game.
Big man could do more.
That's stupid and asinine.
It's cute.
You're better off shooting the 3.
I'd be Michael Jordan in this era.
I'm old school.
You have to adapt or change sports.